That was all of us collectively sighing. Why? Because the day we've all been waiting for is finally here. When this video goes up, it'll likely be after the, what is this month? I'm terrible with months. November 8th. I know the number, I don't know the month because I'm just terrible. After today, November 8th will have passed. I have no idea who's going to win this election. I have none. None at all, because it's such a crazy one. I've been all over the place. I've been through 3 different camps at this point. We're going to talk about all of them in this video, if you couldn't tell by the title. So, what I want to ask you is, obviously my normal disclaimer when it comes to politics, like these kind of videos. If you cannot, in any circumstance, hear an opinion that is not your own and you like to live in an echo chamber, leave now. Because you may hear something that is completely against what you stand for, and if that's a problem, just go. Go now before you have to leave a dislike, because I'd rather you just leave and not to be a dislike, if you know what I mean. If you're willing to give it a shot, thank you. But, anyway, today we're going to be talking. I doubt this will be the final time we talk about this election, because next week we'll be talking about whoever wins. But, today we're going to talk about my journey through this election and all the different places I've been, how I've ended up on one side of the spectrum to the completely other, it almost feels like at this point, in the span of one election. So, as I said, please buckle up, because there's a bit of a ride here. If you hear me making noises, I'm sorry, I fidget. If you're new to the channel, I do that sometimes when I'm talking, because I'm weird. Anyway, so let's start off from the beginning. When this election first started, I know for a fact I was still in high school. I don't remember age-wise when I had first heard of the candidates. And I was staunchly in the fuck Donald Trump category, okay? I was. Don't try and kill me already, alright? Hear me out here. I was in that camp. And for a very long time, I'd adamantly say that. I'd talk about it in my groups. I'd make a buffoon of myself on social media without doing any research, frankly. I did none at all. I would just say random crap, go do this, do that, because everyone I knew, for the most part, was a Democrat. My parents were Democrats. My friends were Democrats for the most part. They might have not self-identified as Democrats. For the most part, I like to identify as an independent, because I've always held beliefs that didn't exactly toe party line, if you know what I mean. But for the most part, identified as a Democrat. And for a long time that happened, and I supported Hillary. And then, somewhere along the lines, I was told about the man, the legend, Bernie Sanders. A lot of people, myself included, were just blown away with some of the things he was saying. The way he went off against the establishment, the way he went off about how people were corrupt and how this and that. And I had never seen a candidate that enthusiastic and have that much energy, obviously besides later to find out, But at the time, Bernie Sanders had then won I had decided Bernie Sanders was my guy. Bernie Sanders was awesome. And I genuinely really liked Bernie Sanders. I got a little bit of hate for turning against the Hillary machine from my inner circles, and I said, Bernie's better. I just believe that, and I think it's better. I've always kind of been more of a rebellious choice when it comes to that. I've tended to go for the people who say fuck the establishment, if you know what I mean. For the most part. I'm not an anarchist or anything like that. In fact, I'm nowhere near. I've used this term centrist. I believe I'm about there, but when it comes to certain things of the government, I genuinely do not like them. Anyway, though, moving on. So Bernie Sanders was my guy for a while, and the crowd had so much energy with Bernie Sanders. Whenever I watched between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton's people just seemed so robotic. They seemed so skewed and fake. It was just terrible. And that fake smile she always has and all this crap. When I saw Bernie's people, they genuinely liked him. He truly was the embodiment of a populist candidate, and that's why I liked him. That's why I was drawn to him as a candidate, because he he was a really, really good candidate. And to this day, he still says some very good things that I agree with. Some things, obviously, I don't agree with people 100% on everything. That's one thing I do have to say. But Bernie Sanders was a really good candidate. And so the day came where we voted in the primary. I voted for Bernie Sanders. My mother voted for Bernie Sanders, too, if I remember correctly. Not sure she wants me saying that, but I don't think she cares. And that was that. We voted Bernie Sanders, and that was that. But the news came out, and Bernie lost. And for a while, I was bummed. I was upset. I was annoyed, and I was mad. Because I genuinely, when I started to see Hillary more and more, I started to hate her, especially when it came to the debates, because she was just so robotic and so fake, and she was terrible. I genuinely really I didn't like her at the time. Really didn't. She was okay when I first saw her, and I honestly only supported her because of partisan lines. If you want the truth, I was a partisan idiot. And I just said, okay, Democrats, go for it. I didn't pay any attention. And to my defense, I was a high school student. I couldn't vote yet. So I had no real reason to research, if you know what I mean, because it didn't matter what I said, so to speak. Like, it kind of mattered what I said, but I couldn't vote myself, if you know what I mean. But when I could, obviously, start to vote, I started doing a little bit more research into the party, and I said, yeah, I like Bernie. Then the DNC came. And WikiLeaks decided to reveal the information. If you haven't seen it, you should really go read up on it. That Bernie Sanders was robbed, really was robbed of being what should have been the Democratic nominee. He should have, undoubtedly, he should have been the Democratic nominee. He had the support of the popular people. He had the popular vote. He just had to have. If you've seen Hillary's people compared to his, you could clearly see he had the popular vote. And I always believed that. And when this thing came out about WikiLeaks, I was furious. Many of us were furious. It wasn't just me. A movement slowly grew in the Democratic Party to a point where at the DNC they were preaching party unity and blah, blah, blah. But when it came down to it, half of the room, they didn't want us to see. They didn't want us to see, but I did see. Half of the room left the DNC in protest. They left. They just left. Half of the entire Democratic Party left that room completely against what was happening. And I don't think they've recovered to this day, honestly. They're trying to downplay it in the media, but I don't think they've recovered. And I can bear witness to this because I'm going to tell you some more stories coming up about what's happening so far and where I stand. So, but that's later, of course. Now, what then happened was during these protests, and this is how I know about them as well, because there was documented evidence about these protests, Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, you may have heard of her, you may not have, because she's a third-party candidate, and the media, while they are showing her name, hasn't really... They gave her one shot. They gave her one shot to speak her mind, and they gave Johnson two, but I think they should have given Jill Stein much more. She is... All in all, she is a good candidate, and I like her, and I do think that she could have taken on Donald Trump, because she is a good candidate. I believe that she represents a good chunk of people, and she represents exactly what Hillary Clinton never did. She is not fake, and that's exactly what I liked about her. So, I saw her in the protests, I saw what was happening, and I said, you know what, I kind of like her. I kind of like her as a candidate, so I started moving into the Jill Stein camp and started going around and seeing things, and for the most part, I liked what I saw. The Jill Stein camp was, for the most part, really good, and I liked what was happening. They came up on the stage, and everything seemed pretty damn cool. Now, this is the problem, though. This is where things started to change. I had always heard and known that the VP of Jill Stein, I don't remember his name, It was one of those names I'd probably butcher anyway, even if I did. Her VP is a supporter of Black Lives Matter. Now, when Black Lives Matter, you can even go back on my Twitter timeline. I delete nothing unless there's some kind of mistake in there. when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I was originally kind of a supporter. I didn't really believe in violence. I agreed that something needed to be done when it came to racial problems in America, because while I don't believe now, anyway, that America is inherently racist and the world is inherently blah, 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 I do believe it is a little bit ridiculous, if you know what I mean, that this much stuff is happening. Though I believe the way the Black Lives Matter was going about at the time was kind of wrong, but, well, not at the time, but now I do, but at the time, I kind of understood where they were coming from. However, then what started to happen was I started to listen to some more what I call rational people. They tend to go over data. They tend to show things that the media refuses to show. They go against what you're normally supposed to, quote unquote, see. And what I started to see was shocking. Well, for starters, Jill Stein, I don't think she's adamantly and said it. But unfortunately, like Hillary Clinton, it sounds like she supports feminists. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's wrong with feminism? Well, let me remind you what's wrong with feminism.
I get dressed in the morning, I'm triggered. I take a shower, I'm triggered. I get in the car, I'm triggered.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Right? So, there's that. Now, as I said, I haven't seen it happen myself, but she started to attract the camp of feminism, the social justice camp. I started to notice people in the movement sort of being that way. Not as bad, from what I've seen, entirely as bad, but there are definitely some people in her little camp, just like the Democrats now, that are definitely drinking from the social justice pools. They are definitely part of the movement. And that's where I started to go, okay, here's a problem. Because it was during this time that I began to become ostracized from my own party. You probably won't believe this, but, well, some of you may, because I'm not the only one that this happened to, but I have always leaned to the left, and I've pretty much been, while I am very centered, I feel, on a lot of issues. Like, I've been adapting and changing, especially over, this election and whatnot. I lean towards the center, I believe, but I'm more to the left. I'm okay, for example, with some social programs and that kind of stuff. Some things, no. Some things, yes. That's why I believe the right term to call me is centrist. I used to call myself a liberal, and I believe I still could be called one, but I believe centrist is the more accurate term. I could be wrong on that, though. I don't entirely know the political philosophy, if you know what I mean. But anyway, I digress. So what happened was, I've talked about this before, but something weird was happening, and this is where I started to become ostracized from the left almost. I was seeing this growing movement on Twitter and these kind of places where, yes, we call them social justice, but it's become alarming how much it's risen in the ranks. For example, on Twitter, multiple times I just simply stated many times on Twitter, because there were hashtags going around it. I believe I counted 3 before I was ostracized. 3 that basically were saying, fuck white people, fuck this, fuck that, sexual, heterosexual, blah, 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 blah. The Tumblrism, as we like to call it nowadays. That was going on, and I simply went in there, unaware what the fuck was even happening. I'm like, what the hell? What is going on? I went in there. I knew Tumblr was bad, but I never had seen these kind of people before from the left. I'd never seen the terror that is the Tumblrites, as we call them. I went in there, and I simply stated, why are you saying this? I thought we're for equality. And when I said these things, and of course it got progressively worse, I'm not going to lie. There were some cases where I said some semi-offensive things. I personally didn't see it as offensive, or if it was quote-unquote offensive, it was out of mistake. By that I mean, there was one statement I made. This was I'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. But they started coming after me in raids. The first one was very semi-small, but many times I got called a bigot, a transphobe, blah, 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 blah. And I started seeing people openly say things that were against me. They were saying, you aren't an ally, you aren't doing this, you need to do this if you're an ally. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what an ally is. An ally is somebody who is standing with you, but that doesn't fucking mean they bow before you. If that was the case, the United States would be much bigger than it is. Our allies would be the United States, if that was the case. If our allies had to bow before us like they were kings, then, like we were kings, I mean, the United States would encompass almost the entire world. And same with Russia, frankly, and China and all them. This would pretty much be a race between free countries if that was how alliances worked. And that's not how it works. That isn't how it works. And that shouldn't be how it works, frankly. If that's the case, then we're just never going to get anything done, and we'll never have the power to be allies with one another. But anyway. So this happened twice, and, the reaction was pretty much the same. Then the third time came when I said something. I believe I understand where the controversy came in, because they did point it out that we'll get into it. What I said specifically was, why are so many LGBTQ plus people mad this month? Because these hashtags all happened in the course of 1 month. And people exploded. And I mean they exploded. There were people telling me to check my quote-unquote white privilege. There were people going off on me, calling me a transphobe. There were people openly saying that if they had things their way, I have screenshots to show you if you don't believe me, that they're basically saying we deserve some very terrible things. You can read it. I'm sure you've probably read it on the screen by now, unless I can't find it, in which case, well, fuck my life. And I'm just like, whoa. This is supposed to be my party. Why am I being berated and assaulted for being for equality? Why? And basically what I said was a joke. It was semi-serious, but what I was finding really annoying was months after people were bringing up the Orlando shooting like I had done it. Specifically, people were saying, it's because of you that people died. I'm like, what are you talking about? I live in Orlando. For fuck's sake. It was some of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And they assumed my position. They assumed everything about me. They didn't give me a chance. And that is where I truly, genuinely saw the side of the left that conservatives and the right wing had been talking about for so long. I had been ostracized from my own group. And for days, this continued to happen. I was berated and rated with just constant, you are this, you're that. And obviously, at some point, I just gave up and started telling them all to fuck off. Because you really just cannot take that much. You can't take that much. It's too much at that point. It gets overwhelming. So, and I'm not one for blocking. So I would just start, I got to a point I got so mad, I started saying the most offensive things. Not offensive in the sense that, like they say, like, you're a racist. No, by that I mean I started saying, fuck you and all this stuff. And started going off them like a rabid dog. I openly admit, when I get mad, when it comes to political issues, and somebody doesn't want to have a rational conversation, I will become a rabid dog and I will shut you down. All right? But when it comes to, rational conversation, I don't care. Which is why I try to be, this with most of my other videos, for the most part, I have been, I tried to see it from both sides. I tried to be neutral about it. I tried to be calm. But when it comes to certain things, I will become a rabid dog, and I openly say that, and I'm happy to say that, because sometimes I have to, I really genuinely believe this, all right? When I was ostracized then, I started looking more into this, and I started seeing the problem rising. This is when I learned of the problem with feminism. This is where I learned the problem with Black Lives Matter. Let me remind you who they are, if you don't remember entirely who they've become anyway. They used to be something different, and I will give you that, Black Lives Matter. I used to be able to kind of support you, but now this is what you've become. Roll it.
No, I don't. Guys, is there anything we should know?
You just know that all white people are fucking devils.
And make sure you air that one.
Air that shit.
Now. Don't take that
All
one out.
white cops are fucking devils and white people. Y'all are fucking devils. I don't like none of you motherfuckers.
That's what you become, Black Lives Matter. So, what happened was I started looking at other forms of media. I started looking at right-wing, quote-unquote, or centrists, rather than my normal news sources that many people go through. And I started going through people like Sargon of Akkad, great guy, very centrist, I feel. He self-identifies as liberal, but he really kind of is in the middle, I feel. I don't know. It's weird how that stands, because, like, well, you can watch him yourself. He's a great guy, easy to find. And then I started watching people like Milo. Obviously, if you don't know who Milo is, you're going to soon, because he's huge. Very adamant Trump supporter. Has some very interesting positions on things. For example, he's gay, but he's not entirely for gay marriage. And to some people, that's just like, what? But he has an interesting argument that, if you hear people out, this is what I've learned from being ostracized, honestly. And this is the mistake that they made by doing this. I feel, let me get this out before I, continue with my story. I feel social justice's biggest mistake when it came to Gamergate, when it came to this, when it came to that, when it came to all of it, was that by ostracizing all these people, by calling them all these names, by doing this, by doing that, what they did is they threw them out. They continuously shrunk what is considered acceptable social justice. And because they did that, because they were thrown out of their own, what they thought were their groups, and because so many people were converted to this ideology of actual hatred, because of that, people were forced to seek out other opinions to find out what the fuck is going on. And because of that, you stumble on people like Sargon, you stumble on people like Undoomed, you stumble on people like Milo, you stumble on so many people. And when you see the examples, when you see these things, because they did this thing, they made it so that I was able to see the other side. So honestly, I have to thank them for ostracizing me, because now I've been able to see both sides, and I feel I've become a better person for it. Honestly, I feel that way, and I think I'll feel that way at the end of time at this point. I never thought it would come to where I've come, but anyway. The thing about it is, when this was all happening, it continued to grow worse, and it has only continued to grow worse. And I genuinely believe, this is what I was going to try and say earlier before I went on a little tangent, I genuinely believe at this point, it's gotten to a point where this little group, if they are not put in check soon, if they're not put in their place, and I mean that fully when I say put in their place, if they aren't told what they are doing is unacceptable, if they do not stop this absolute madness, if they get power, this country, I feel personally, will be in trouble. And I think many people feel that way too. Because these people are... It's not that they're intelligent. They're not. They're ridiculously stupid. The problem is they're loud and they're violent. They aren't rational people. They are thugs. They are. They really, really are. People are obviously going to call me racist for that statement, which I find ridiculous, because thug doesn't even have a racial connotation. So, it's a little ridiculous that people will make that, but they will. And at this point, I've just come to accept it. So, that's why I feel these people need to be put in their place, because they are extremely dangerous. And by being put in their place, obviously, I don't mean anything violent, because they probably will try and say that's exactly what I mean. They're going to try and call me some kind of right-wing extremist, even though I'm not, which I always find funny about them. I believe there are many examples, let me say this, there are many examples where right-wing people, and by the way, I find that ridiculous, because right-wing people, if you really genuinely just look at right-wing people, there are many that are honestly awesome. There are some people that are terrible, like, classic Republicans here in America, like, some of them that are definitely not my kind of thing at all. But then there are some really cool right-wing people that are genuinely on point when it comes to many social issues. And many times you will see that these quote-unquote social justice warriors, even though that's not what they are anymore, it's becoming a growing movement. That's why it's a little scary to me. They will try and shut them down. They will try and silence them. And they don't understand that it only made them stronger. And that's exactly what happened. And they've started to take over now, because they're getting more people, and that's why things have changed, I feel. Some people like to say this is a culture war, and yeah, I kind of agree. It is. And that's a problem, I feel. It's a problem. I don't want it to be the case. I can't believe it's the case, but it is now. So then, all this was happening. I started continuously watching, and the more emails came out for WikiLeaks clearly showing Hillary Clinton was a corrupt person. She was doing some very bad things. If you haven't read the WikiLeaks articles, I suggest you do. I won't hate you if you're Hillary Clinton supporter, obviously, because I don't hate people for what they vote. I think it's wrong that people have to actually genuinely hate people. It's one thing if I'm yelling at you. It's another thing to actually hate you. There's a difference, all right? I can yell at you and be aggressive and get heated in the moment, but that doesn't mean I hate you. For example, I don't hate these people that came after me and ostracized me from my own group, really. I don't hate them. I believe they're misinformed. I believe that there are many things you can look at that shows that I honestly believe these people have been brainwashed. And it needs to stop. But I don't hate the people. I hate who's been brainwashing them. And I don't even necessarily hate them. I don't really hate anyone. What I hate is how misinformed they are. They are misinformed because they have a belief that the world is inherently bad. And I personally believe the world is inherently good. People don't like it. That's apparently now become a controversial opinion. But I would say if you genuinely believe the world is a bad place, I would like to ask anyone in America to just go outside. Go outside, talk to people. The world has bad people, but the world is not inherently bad, okay? I want to get that out there, because a lot of people for some reason think that the world is. It's not. I know where it comes from, too. I used to think the same. It's a teenage concept. It's whatever reason, for high school's constantly berating you with their, authoritarian ways and doing this and doing that, and it's a teenage concept, and the high school systems do not help with this concept being forced into people's heads. But the simple fact of the matter is, the world is not inherently bad. And on top of that, I would like to say that people who misread history books, and by that I don't mean that they literally misread things, I mean that they read something and think one thing incorrectly. And yes, there is a way to actually say that. Then I think you need to reread the history books. And what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of people, and I know why the Democratic, like if you look at, say, the Democratic Party or, these people who think the world are inherently bad, they tend to be younger. Mostly, for the most part. There are some, obviously, extreme cases. It's rare, but it's but they normally are younger. And the reason this is, and this was something I got almost in trouble for multiple times in my high schools, but I did bring it up, and so did some of my other friends. We are constantly taught, and this is entirely why I think social justice is a thing as well, because it's been reinforced now in colleges. We are taught that because of the way history books are written, and it's not necessarily an inaccurate way to write them, but let me get on. Because of the way history books are written, when you leave high school, when you leave schooling period, you come out thinking that white people are slave masters and all this shit. It's not true. The majority of people, white people included, are egalitarians. We don't care. We're okay. We are okay with you being equal by law. We're okay with it. We don't care. You're okay. You're a person, and we know you're a person. And These people leave thinking they need to go out and right the wrongs of the world, thinking, oh my God, look at everything that's happened in the past. I need to go out there and fight racism where there is no racism. Many times there is genuinely no racism where they're trying to fight. Is there racism in the world? Of course. If you say something doesn't exist, period, you will always be proven wrong, because all it takes is a single example. A single example is all that needs to be done. So you need to understand, yes, it exists. But it doesn't exist at the level any of them think it does. And that's my personal belief. If you believe otherwise, you're entitled to your opinion. You're free to argue with me. But I believe that racism is nowhere near as bad as you want. Yes, I almost said want. I think some of these people do have a victim complex, and they do want there to be racism because they want something to fight. They want something to feel like they're cleansing themselves for. But, sorry if you're hearing that. But I feel that racism is much less of a problem nowadays, and people should really go outside if they think it is still a problem. And the reason I'm going on this big tangent is because I think you know where this is leading up. So all this continued to go, and it continued to spark, and finally, especially from Milo suggesting it. Obviously, I don't talk to these people personally. I would love to. I mean, that would be really cool. They're technically my elders, so it'd be really kind of, I don't want to say awkward, but it almost kind of would be awkward, because I'd just be like, hi, I'm an ex-liberal. Want to talk? And then they go on like a historical rant, and I'd just be like, okay. I know none of this, but okay. No, I did look up a lot of what these people said, obviously, but, you know, they can just pull things up because they are from that's experience. That whole expression, respect your elders, doesn't mean necessarily, you know, respect them in a way that you must bow down to them. What it means is you must understand that they are older, so they have wisdom. And wisdom is important, especially because you can learn from their mistakes, potentially. Or from their triumphs. But anyway. So I started looking into Trump. And obviously on the media, they were saying this and that. So I decided to start watching his live streams. I gave him a chance to talk. I gave him a chance. I started going into the circles of the right side, the right-wing people. And I found that what Donald Trump was saying about the right wing and about him and about all of that was entirely false. It was entirely false. Everything that they were saying was racist and all this crap about him was exactly what they said to me. It was never racist. It was never bigoted. It was never this or that, blah, blah, blah. The problem is, the reason they said that, like, for example, I know someone's going to say, dude, he said, look at my African-American friend, or, you know, just my African-American over there, and some people took huge offense to that. Well, what you need to understand is, and I'm sure, honestly, Donald Trump knows this too. I mean, how couldn't he? Donald Trump is egotistical. Some people think that's a bad thing. I don't. I mean, I do have an ego. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I don't have one nearly as big as Donald Trump, I feel. Some people would argue that I somehow do in my personal circles. I don't see it. But being egotistical is not bad. Being egotistical means that you care enough about yourself to like yourself. And that's not something that's easy for a lot of people, especially on my old side. And I say that because it was my old side at this point. The right has treated me so much better than the left ever did, which I find hilarious. Nowadays, the left becomes rabid dogs with me just saying words now, and the right just laughs with me. It's insanity. I never thought I would be in this position. Going into and looking at the other side, the side that wasn't mine, I am genuinely seeing what people are talking about when they said in their younger years they were like staunch Democrats, and then in their later years they went Republican because they saw the crowds and whatnot. Now, personally, even to this day, I don't like the old Republicans, quote unquote. I like this new movement that's come out with Donald Trump, which is why, if you couldn't tell by now, I've landed in this camp, and this is actually where our destination ends. I early voted because we live in Orlando, as I said. We early voted, I believe, 1 or 2 weeks ago, whenever the early voting was. Sorry, I'm bad with dates sometimes. I personally early voted for Donald Trump. My family has not left their left positions, and they're entitled to it. But I voted for Donald Trump. Whether he wins or loses tonight, we will see. But I hope he does. Because this isn't the normal Republican Party anymore, and that's why I think I've been so drawn to it. It's an entirely different movement. This group is my group, it feels. These are the kind of people who have no problem with gay people, who have no problem with this and that. They have no problem with it. They just don't care. They have right-wing principles, but they also are okay with people, and that's why I like them. Unlike the left and Hillary Clinton, who ostracized me. Quite literally ostracized me. I could try and go back, because obviously I'm smaller. So some people probably wouldn't notice. Obviously, you guys on YouTube would. So if I just started saying, Hillary Clinton's awesome, blah, 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 you'd be like, what the fuck? But on Twitter, so many people have blocked me at this point, because that's something I find interesting about the left. A lot of them, at least the ones I've talked to for some reason, are very liberal about their block button, which I find interesting, because the old movement, especially the one I was inspired by as a child, and I believe my parents are part of too, which is why I don't blame them for voting Democrat. It's what they've done all their lives. But anyway, the old movement of Democrats and whatnot, the old side that I was on, used to be completely anti-censorship and whatnot. But now I believe that has completely gone to the other side at this point. I believe now, if you are anti-censorship, if you want to truly remain free when it comes to these things, like the internet and whatnot, you have to vote for Donald Trump. Now, that's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm not. A lot of people like to say, you're trying to influence me, blah, blah, blah. Nah, I'm just telling my story. And if this is going to make you vote Donald Trump, okay. I doubt it would, frankly, because it's just an anecdotal story, but you know what I mean. And that's where our story pretty much, that's where we are now. I voted for Donald Trump. It's been 2 weeks. I'm pretty much waiting at this point. Do I disagree with some of the things Donald Trump said? Yes. Have I evolved? Yes, on some things. Do I agree with everything? Of course not. I never have with any candidate. The only candidate I will ever agree with 100% wholly and wholeheartedly, without a doubt, is myself. And I think that's the case for everyone, and I think that's what people need to understand. Rarely, it might be technically possible if you're just purely one way and not a centrist, but when it comes to someone who's more centrist or, has more, I guess, I don't know a good way to put it, but just, more out there ideas, excuse me, sorry if you heard that, but you will never like a candidate as much as you will like yourself when it comes to your ideas, because you have to understand, in democracy, especially a representative democracy like America, I almost said the Americas, what the fuck? Jesus, I am not a time traveler, I swear to God. I'm not a time traveler. Anyway, like in America, when you have a representative democracy, you have to understand you will never get a candidate who is a mirror image of yourself. It's very unlikely. Very unlikely. So, which is exactly why I find it so strange that here in America we just don't do research. Which is why I'm kind of glad, like I said, that my side had ostracized me, because the simple fact of the matter is, because they did that, I've suddenly started doing research and whatnot, and suddenly I feel way more informed, and I genuinely believe that I am more informed at this point than many people who have just screamed their heads off at me. Like, for example, here's an image of something the media doesn't want you to see. The media's for days and for this entire election berated Donald Trump for being anti-LGBT and blah, 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 anti-gay people and all this crap. Yet, they don't show this image. Why do you think they don't show this image? I just have to ask you that, honestly. Why do you think they did not show that image? Do you think it was pure coincidence? If you do, you're an optimist. I'm sorry to tell you, you really are an optimist. That is, unfortunately, I don't believe, in my opinion, true. I do believe this is a narrative pushed by the establishment, and I don't mean just Democratic establishment at this point, because the Republican Party, the old Republican Party, the one I didn't like, is scared. They're terrified. And when they betrayed Donald Trump, they signed their death warrant. They are terrified now, and they should be. Because if Donald Trump wins, as he said, we are going to drain the swamp. It's that simple. We are going to remove them all. And I'm all for it. Now, that was my presidential choice, and this is where things are going to be interesting, and that's why I think it's a good segue. Here's what I did for Congress. I actually, because there are rumors that despite Bernie being cheated and despite, him doing some shady things, like he did end up endorsing Hillary Clinton, which I thought, was a huge mistake, but he did do it. But then again, he was in a tough position. I do have to genuinely say that. He gave his word that no matter what happens at the end of the primary, he would, do that. And that's something I think I can't really fight Bernie on. Because like Bernie, I am a man of my word. Like, if I say the words, I promise, then that's that. That is definitive. It will happen no matter what. I do not break my promises. And Bernie essentially did the same thing as a promise when he signed that paper. He said unequivocally he will support candidate when it came down to the DNC's nomination. And it happened, and he can't go against his word at that point. So I believe it's, it's... Some people will be mad, and some people will say Bernie sold out, and I understand. I do, but I disagree with that one. Respectfully, I disagree. I believe he made the right decision. I wouldn't do it happily. Like, even if you look at Bernie, though, when he came into the DNC, he did not look happy that he was doing what he was doing, which is why I think in the position he's in, I think I would have done it too. He doesn't look happy about it, if you know what I mean. He's just doing it because he has to, and he knows he has to, so he does it. Because he gave his word, and he doesn't want to break his word. And I think that's respectable, honestly. But anyway. Now let's go on to Congress. As I said, they betrayed him. If you didn't hear, when those stupid tapes, those ridiculous tapes that the media went on for days, about Trump apparently being a sexist. And if you think Donald Trump is sexist, okay, you have that belief. But I'm going to tell you right now, going through high school, going through all these different places, I don't know how it was in your day if you're like an older adult, but in our day, that is normal talk. Even for people who aren't really sexually active or anything. Or even interested in it, if you know what I mean. It's still just regular talk. It's joking. We're playing. Who cares, But, that happened, and a lot of Republicans refused to stand by Trump. They refused to be with him, and a movement grew at that moment, especially from the pro-Trump people, that they basically made a commitment to say, when it came down to the election, or early voting, or whatever, they would not vote in the senators, the Republicans. And honestly, I didn't. What I did was, I did up and down Democrat when it came to the Senate race. And some of you might think that's strange, and the reason I did that, going back to Bernie, is there are rumors that if the Democratic Party is the majority party in Congress, Bernie could be the majority. And the thing about it is, I genuinely think, not just because I liked Bernie, but because I feel it's, well, I can't say that. I was going to say objectively, but you really, that's opinion. But anyway, subjectively, and, just with my opinion, let's just say that. Let's put it down to dumber down terms. I believe Bernie and Donald Trump would be a good tag team. Some people are like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Well, they both have populism behind them. Like, they're both very staunch populist candidates. They had a lot of support, and they still do. They represent, I feel, the best of the two sides, in my opinion. And they share a common goal. An end to the corruption that has ruined our country when it comes to things like money in politics and that kind of thing. Both of them do. They both adamantly said throughout this entire election that they want to do things like the Drain the Swamp movement idea. And that's exactly why I think if Bernie won, and he's the House majority, which I think he would be, it'd be very hard for the Democratic Party not to make him majority leader, if they ended up taking over. I feel they'd be a good tag team. Bernie and Trump would be. They have different, they're right and left, but that doesn't matter. What I've learned through doing this research is that when it comes down to it, a lot of people on the right and left, when it comes to being, sensible, they have a lot of agreements on things. When you really take people on an individual level rather than just calling them sexist and all these crap, they have a lot of the same opinions as you. And that's what I feel is important from this. You can learn a lot about people if you give them a chance, and that's what I did. I gave the other side a chance, and I learned a lot, and I suggest others do the same. If you've never seen the other side, give it a shot. You might learn something entirely new. Now, I'm not saying switch sides like I did. I had a reason to switch sides. I was completely removed. But maybe, I don't know, go in anonymously, get to know the community or whatever, and find out if it's your kind of thing. If it's your kind of thing, go with it. But that's how I felt about the Senate race, and I feel that if Bernie wins, if Bernie, if the Senate becomes the majority owned by Democrats, and all those Republicans that betrayed Trump are removed, and Bernie did become the majority leader, which it sounds like they are, because I've even been getting emails saying that it sounds like it's very likely that if the Democrats win the Senate, that Bernie will be the majority leader. If that happened, I think Bernie and Trump would actually genuinely be a good tag team. Obviously, when it comes to economic policy, they will fight to the death with each other when it comes to, socialism. But that's the thing about it. Like I said, I don't have a problem with socialism. And that's one thing Donald Trump and me don't agree with at all. But the fact is, there are many things I do agree with Donald Trump on. Freedom of speech and all that. Gun control, all those things. I'm mainly Donald Trump. So, that's where I stand on it. And that's where I've landed in this election, this crazy case that has been this election. This has been... Some people say that, I started this off, and honestly, I am joking. I honestly think this was a good election. A lot of people are exhausted, and they're like, oh my God, why did we have to do this? I never want to do this again. Well, let me just tell you something, honestly, in my opinion. This has been the best election ever, because... I couldn't be more glad to be in this election, honestly, because this is the election that made me look at the other side. This is the election that made me go and look at all the sides, and I believe this election has made me a better person, frankly. Some people, obviously, if you're a partisan, I see why so many people are mad. Like, if you were partisan about everything, you hated this election, because the two candidates have so much about them. But I genuinely feel here in democratic society, we need to take on more of an individual approach to things. By that I mean, look at what they stand for, think about things, and then decide, rather than saying, okay, Democrat or Republican. This isn't a matter of me choosing the Republican Party over the Democratic Party anymore. This is me choosing Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, because in my opinion, based on all the things I've seen, based on her actions, based on everything she has done, Hillary Clinton is a criminal, and I don't want to vote for her, so I didn't. I voted for Trump. Am I a Republican? No, I still mainly lean to the left. And hopefully next election, if Hillary Clinton wins, she wins, and I'll make an announcement. If Trump wins, either way, I'll make an announcement to both. But whatever happens, I hope the next election has a leader more for me, because if it comes to a point where the left still has terrible leaders, I don't know what to do. I might just have to go Republican again. And that would be quite sad if it continuously comes down to it, unless the Republicans no longer have that Trumpism, if you know what I mean, to them. And in that case, I'd probably go third party at that point. I will rarely bump my thing, sorry about that. I'm not very partisan anymore. I used to be, and that was a mistake. And for anyone I offended during my time of being a partisan rabid dog, I do want to honestly say I am sorry for that. Nowadays, though, if I shitpost to you on Twitter and you don't like it, I have no apologies. There was just a funny quick story before we wrap up here. There was a case where this guy was going off on Newt Gingrich. I believe is how I say his name. If I said that name incorrectly, forgive me. He was going off on Newt Gingrich because Megyn Kelly and him were having this argument on Fox News, and he basically went off saying that Megyn Kelly destroyed him, when you look at it, really she didn't. All she did was call him a sexist, basically, and said he had anger issues and shit. And I asked the general question, why? Because she's a woman? Because that's what it seemed like. Because all Megyn Kelly said was Newt Gingrich had anger issues. She said this, she said that, and none of it had any substance. So I'm like, okay, how was he destroyed? How was he destroyed? It makes no sense. So I made a conclusion. This guy accused me of putting words in his mouth, which was funny to watch. And I said, okay, well, would you like to clarify my position? He told me, no, fuck off. I'm like, what? 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 I'm like, why? And he's like, no questions. I'm like, why? Because I don't respect you. I'm like, what? You don't respect me, so I can't ask you questions. He's like, nope. And then he immediately, like, he blocks me. Then he starts talking with me blocked, and I'm just like, like, I understood where he was coming from a little bit, which is why I gave him a chance. I'm like, okay, would you like to clarify? Because, I'm not interviewing people, I'm just on Twitter. I'm just fucking saying shit. I'm not taking it too seriously. And then out of nowhere, this guy's like, did you just assume my thoughts? I'm like, no, I made a conclusion based on what you said. If I'm wrong, clarify. And he's like, no, I'm not going to clarify. Fuck you. I'm like, okay. At one point, it got so barbarous that he started, like, by barbarous, I mean, I felt like he was just, like, beating his chest as he said it, like, boo, 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 kind of thing. Like, he started, like, saying, bitch, I got, like, I think he said, like, 10,000 followers. Get in line. I'm like, what? You're the one responding to me. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I had to tell that story because that story still might be going on. I think every now and again I got a notification of him talking about me, and I'm just like, by that I mean other people adding me, and then him being in the so I know he's probably talking about me, which is, I do have to say, that's very thin-skinned. If you have to literally blot someone, you talk behind their back, and then you literally continue to do it, and then you send people after someone. That's really sad. If you do that, you're pretty much a coward. But anyway, I think we're pretty much about done here. That's pretty much where we've landed in this election. If you've made it this far, thank you for hearing me out. These are my thoughts, how I landed here, who I voted for, and whatnot. We'll see what happens tonight. I don't know if this video will get out by today. Probably not, because it normally takes me quite a bit of time to get footage, though it's become a faster process, especially now that we have another topic to talk about. I actually have a gaming computer now, not like a laptop, but I mean a legit, like, tower gaming computer, and we're going to talk about that. Probably not next week, because next week we're probably going to talk about whoever wins after today. Feel free to see either my just pure raw on Twitter if Donald Trump loses, and feel free, if Donald Trump loses, or feel free to see me just, like, bitching and being an absolute rabid dog on the entire left if Donald Trump wins. I will say, I'm not going to lie, it will feel good to see the side that kicked me out lose if he does win. It will feel very good. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening so far. Obviously, if you'd like to talk with me or debate me in the comment section down below, feel free. As I said, I believe everyone is an individual, and I tend to take my YouTube channel more seriously than I take my Twitter. So never assume anything entirely serious about me until you've brought it up to me on YouTube, because for the most part, unless it comes from my fans, I don't really care about Twitter, if that makes sense. Like, I just kind of, I don't troll, because I genuinely do mean a lot of the things I mean, but I kind of, like I said, I've named quite a few examples of things I've said on Twitter. So, because I'm limited to 140 characters, so it's just like, fuck it. Let's piss everyone off today. Why not? Let's get people's attention. And it works. I'm not trying to troll. I genuinely am trying to start a conversation with these people, but sometimes I don't want to have the conversation. So, yeah. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. This has been Xel'crin, and I'll see you in the next video, stream, or wherever the fuck you find me. Go Donald Trump! Bye, guys.